Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of Hidden Treasures from the Hopkinton Historical Society. With me today is Mattina, who is the Vice President of the Historical Society, who has some treasures here to share with us. Hello, Ann.
Hi, how are you, Jim?
I'm doing great. How are you today?
Good, thanks for having me back.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Our pleasure. Happy to have you here. I'm always amazed at what we find at the Historical Society. I wonder if every town is as good as a historian as our Historical Society is, because it's amazing.
I'm not 100% sure. I know that there are, almost every town in the area has a historical society.
Yeah.
And some are much more organized than others. We were really lucky in having an incredibly dedicated group of people in 1951 who formed the Historical Society and collected through the years. And there was always such an interest in the history of the town.
Yeah.
And then when the building was bought, the former Hayden Row School / Hopkinton Grange, now Historical Society, in the early 90s, and we were able to bring everything into one spot. And we've had a lot of great help working with archivists such as Linda Connolly to organize it and to have finding aids so that people from anywhere could access this information. We're trying to get as much online as we can so people know what we have.
Right. Now, I didn't think to ask this earlier. I'm just wondering, do you know what year that building is from?
1870.
1870.
Yes, and if you look at it, it was built at the exact same time as the Woodville School, which is now the Woodville Rod and Gun Club.
Oh, okay.
And they're kind of matching buildings. Obviously, there's a set on the lot differently, but those are two, I think, the only two remaining 19th century schoolhouses we have in town, I think.
That's like so cool. And you know what I love? When you walk in there, you can get the sense. You can feel the schoolness of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
All right, so what have you brought for us today?
Well, we have a fabulous collection at the Society of the Fitch family of Hopkinton. And the Fitches were all descended, the group from Hopkinton was descended from Elijah Fitch, who was the second minister of the Congregational Church. And they lived in various places in and around East Main and down Ash Street. Okay. And the place that most people are familiar with is the Fitch family farm, which is also known as the Elmwood Farm. And it's still in existence. It's the brick farm. We're so lucky to have people that own it now, that take care of it. The town owns property all around it. You can walk back there. The actual house itself is privately owned, however. Okay. And some people might notice it if they're driving down Ash. A lot of times they have eggs for sale out front.
Yes.
So that's the building we're talking about.
Okay.
And what we have here is a wedding gift. We have part of a wedding gift that was given to John Augustus Howe. Excuse me. I knew I was going to do that. John Augustus Fitch and his bride, Lucy Ann Howe, in March of 1829. So it is a set of English transferware that we actually have, I believe, all 12 place settings that were given to them by a member of the Howe family. As a wedding gift in 1829. We actually have not only all of the pieces to the set, but we also have the original bill of sale for the set, which I thought was kind of interesting. I don't know whether she put that in there as part of the gift so that they would always have it, but we have it. So
now,
we're very
does it say where it was sold from?
Boston.
Okay.
That's the only thing we know is it was Boston, and I think it was in the late fall of 1828. Okay. But it is, unfortunately, there are no marks on it. There's no pattern markings on this, which is kind of sad because, of course, that's the first thing anybody who's a collector interested in old dishware or anything, that's the first thing they look for. Where was it made? Who made it?
Yes.
And it's really a unique set in its the actual depictions that are on it. It's the things that are on it are very interesting. The difference between China and transferware is in China at that time period, they would have been every flower or whatever would have been hand painted right onto the piece.
Yep.
Transferware, that was all very time consuming, very expensive, so people couldn't afford it, and it certainly wasn't something you would give a 12-person place setting, 12 place settings
Yeah.
for a wedding gift. Transferware came about in Great Britain around this time in the 18-teens, 1820s, and literally they would transfer they would make the pattern and then transfer it onto the ceramic.
Okay.
And they could do this over and over and over again.
Like
I guess
printing.
it's like printing.
Yeah. Okay.
And so it's interesting process, and it made it more accessible to more people. But it is highly collectible. I mean, people really love this. When I first discovered we had it, when we first got the collection, and we were going through it and starting to catalog it, and I have to give a shout out to Gail Monroe Clifford, because she did a massive amount of work on this entire project on the Fitch family. We have so many articles and things from their artifacts from their family, and clothing and furniture, and we just have so much. It's just fascinating. But this was something I was drawn to instantly. I thought, I have never seen anything this pretty or unique in terms of transferware. The visuals on it, I'm not sure how close up we can get, but this is a platter from the set. And you can see there are flowers and birds. There's also seashells down here, which is kind of interesting. And then in the background are some Chinese pagodas. During this time period, this was a very big thing. It was called chinoiserie, which was a French way of saying, of like Chinese origin or an homage to the Chinese.
Yep.
And chinoiserie was very prominent all the way through the 19th century. You see all sorts of decorative items with it, and tablecloths and things on the wall, and all sorts of things. So this particular pattern would be considered that. So one of the things that I did when I first found it was, if we first unpacked it, was I took some pictures and I did a Google search, and of course I found immediately that it was transferware and everything. But again, no idea who actually made it, if it was American made or if it was imported from Great Britain. There's nothing on the bill of sale that says anything about an importation tax or anything. So I'm assuming it was made here.
Okay.
That's my assumption, but again, I can't be 100% positive of that. What's also interesting is the edging on the transferware. This is very decorative, and some of it, a lot of it is very just plain kind of white.
Okay.
You would see blue and white transferware. You also see brown and white, and there's some rose and white, but this is blue and obviously the blue and white. But it's very decorative edges. Well, recently Google has improved its, you can do an image search now and it can tell you a lot more about things now. The closest match to this pattern and to this edging on it that I could find was actually Minton. And we typically think of Minton as China, but they also did the transferware, the ceramic transferware. So I don't know if it's Minton. I would assume it would have had that marking on it if it was in fact authentic Minton. But it also looks very much like Staffordshire. So, I guess we could just say it was made in the pattern of that time period. So you can see the different themes with the birds and the flowers. And the seashells are what really interested me because they're very, very well, I don't know if you want to take a closer look at it.
Thanks.
They're very detailed.
Yes.
Everything is very detailed in there.
You know what I find amazing? This is almost 200 years
Almost
old.
200 years old.
And it looks really good. It's not
does.
It's not worn away. And not only is it like a really old piece, but it's been in Hopkinton for this long.
I know.
The Fitch family used this.
Yes. It's amazing. And,
Really
we
is.
have serving pieces and platters and plates, and I think we have a gravy boat as well. So it's a full set. And as I said, it was given to John A. and Lucy Ann Fitch. They got married in 1829, and then they had 8 children, of whom one of whom was Edward, the man that we've talked about before, who went out to Kansas and was killed during Quantrill's raid. And then they had a son named Appleton. I love all these old Hopkinton names. They all used each other's last names as first names when they had children. So there's an Appleton family. There's an Appleton Fitch who left Hopkinton. He went to Indiana and had his family there, but during the Panic of 1873, he lost everything. So he returned with his family to Elmwood Farm, and bringing his family with him. One of his daughters was Lucy Fitch Perkins. Lucy Fitch was his daughter. She later married a man named Perkins. Lucy Fitch Perkins was, I think she was the single biggest juvenile author of juvenile literature in the 19th century, in early 20th century.
Okay.
She was here in Hopkinton during her teenage years. She left and went to Mass College of Art, the Museum of Fine Arts School, and she became an illustrator of children's books, then started to write her own books. And the most famous books was a series called the Twins series. I think she wrote 26 different volumes of the Twins. She would have the Pilgrim twins and the Italian twins, and she illustrated them. She had a story, and she would include cultural references in there, and it was really, really fascinating stuff. And she was a best-selling author. She sold millions and millions of copies of her books. One of the things that I did find interesting while I was reading more about this particular branch of the family was, I guess the family left again after Appleton got back on his feet because they weren't impressed with the Hopkinton schools.
Really?
And I think about that now, and I think that we have the exact opposite thing going on now. Yeah. But Lucy went on to have a great career. And is very famous. I think there's a school named for her in Michigan. So she was part of this crowd. In 1879, John and Lucy celebrated their golden anniversary right at Elmwood Farm. And it was big. It was a very big event. There's a big write-up in the paper of that time period. We do have a photo. I was not able to access it, but it is available of that day, of the Fitches on the lawn, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
It's actually great to have all of the children were there. Edward obviously had been killed, but the living children and their grandchildren, everybody was there for this. And I brought one other thing to share.
Now, before you get to that, you said you had the bill of sale.
Oh, the bill of sale, yes.
So how much did this go for
Service
back then?
for 12, including all the serving pieces, $18. It was $19.15, but they got a $1.15 discount. I'm not sure what the discount was for. It just says off $1.15.
That's
and
funny.
so the total was $18.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes, and you think about that now. I wouldn't even hazard a guess of what it's worth now. I do think that probably the fact that it doesn't have a mark on it, we would have to obviously
discount it a little bit.
It would discount it, but who knows? I mean, it could just be something specific to the Boston area.
Yeah.
But
Also, too, I mean, you would never sell it, but
Right.
you also know the pedigree of
Right.
it, the history of it, like
Right.
where it came from.
Right.
And that's cool.
It is really cool. And if we ever get a chance to go on Antique Roadshow,
Yeah.
I mean, we have so much stuff we could bring. But this is something I would definitely
You know,
say.
that's GBH, isn't it? You should
Yes.
invite them out to
I
your
know,
place.
I know. We should. We should have them come out and take a look at what we have. I did take I took a picture of the inventory of all of the artifacts that we have from
Yep.
the Fitches. I didn't know if you wanted me to share that,
Yeah.
if we had time to do that. But
Okay.
before I do that, I will show you. This is something that we also have. This was a 50th anniversary present. It's a silver, I guess you would call it, it doesn't say, it's a silver compote. Not really compote because it's not actually a dish. But it was given to the Fitches on their 50th wedding anniversary in 1879 by the Claflins. And I tried to figure out which Claflin, but they're not listed in the article as having attended. So I don't know whether they had it sent to them. So it could have
Okay.
been Governor Claflin, could have been one of his sons.
Okay.
Yes. So-
Now, so I'm curious. There's a newspaper article about
Yes.
their 50th anniversary, and
Yes.
we have this stuff. Were they well-to-do?
I think that they were, yes, they were, I don't think they were rich in the sense that they were, high society or anything like that, but I think they were of means.
Okay.
They owned a few houses. As I said, the family owned a few houses on Ash Street, including Elmwood Farm. I know that, they had a lot of things that were saved and collected. They were very well known because Elijah Fitch was the minister, John Fitch was a deacon, Lucy Ann Howe's father was the third minister of Hopkinton. And Elijah Fitch kept up quite a correspondence with the abolitionist Phelps. And all of their letters back and forth are part of the Boston Public Library Anti-Slavery Collection. And they're all digitized, and they're on Digital Commonwealth. So it's mostly ins and outs of things going on in the church, rather than, his name was Amos Phelps, Amos Augustus Phelps. He was a pretty well-known abolitionist
Yep.
of the time. There's not a lot in there about anti-slavery. It's more about, I guess you would say, like church gossip, and
Yeah.
or trying to fill positions and getting things, going.
Right.
So, but all of they were all educated. Certainly, particularly the third and fourth generation, everybody was educated. I was thrilled to find out. I live on Eastview Road, and our neighborhood was one of the first developments of houses in town, and it was developed by the Nealons, and Ann Click's mother and father developed our neighborhood. I wanted to see if I could find our original deed, and I found it online for the house, and evidently all that property down there, where Carrie Lane is, Susan Hazel, all of that, was all part of the Fitch family farm.
Okay.
So it was on both sides of Ash Street. So they were land rich, certainly, but I don't think that they were necessarily high society.
Okay. I feel that you just kind of get that feeling
Yes.
just because
Right.
we have so many artifacts from them. We have so
Well,
much knowledge.
Well, we were so lucky because one of their descendants gave it all to, donated the
Yeah.
whole thing to the Historical Society. I mean, he had so much of it.
How long ago was that?
I think it was less than 10 years ago that we got
Really?
all of this because,
Okay.
you know, Gail was working on it when I started at the Historical Society in 2016. She was, you know, starting to go through and detail everything that we had. And so, and he came down, he's from Maine. His name is Jeremy Wynant. And he came down from Maine, and one of his cousins came with a great-grandson. And they did a talk at the Historical Society.
Oh.
They kind of went through the family tree for us, and I'm pretty sure HCAM I think you have it. I
Okay.
think you have it on in your archives. And anyway, it was great. No one else lives in town anymore.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but as I said, we do have access, you know, to the house. I mean, the people who own Elmwood Farm now have graciously, you know, when we had that historical house and garden tour for the 300th anniversary, that was one of the houses on our tour.
Right.
The other interesting thing about that farmhouse is, supposedly, it was a stop on the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
But it's never been definitively proven. And I don't know how you would definitively prove that. Lucy Fitch Perkins' granddaughter, the author's granddaughter, wrote a book about the family and mentions that her grandmother told her that there was a place in the kitchen, it was behind a pantry, that was used to hide people freeing from, you know, running from
Right.
enslavement. I have, and there's a lot of anecdotal stuff of people mentioning that through the years. There's a beautiful map that was published in the 1930s of the Underground Railroad as they knew it in the Northeast. And it goes all around us. It's in Southborough, it's in Holliston, and you know, it's different colors. It's very interesting. It's from a historical journal in the 1930s, and you know, they have black lines and red lines, and so you can kind of see exactly how people, where they went. But they don't, there's no indication that they stopped in Hopkinton. But again, it was a secret.
Right.
So how would you know?
Right.
How would you know whether it was true or not? You could never definitively prove it.
Right.
I don't think. But
Interesting.
it is interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, now we have a few minutes left.
Okay.
Okay. So can we talk generalities about what the Fitch
Sure.
collection at the Historical Society
Yes.
looks like?
Absolutely, and it's about.
Okay.
I know what's in. First of all, there are letters, diaries, documents. There's a diary from the Civil War, which is really important, that one of the descendants transcribed. We also have a corner chair. It looks like in the shape of a corner, and I think that's from the early 19th century. We have a cradle. We have clothing. We have lots and lots of clothing, which is fantastic. You know, we
Yeah.
have a great volunteer in Nancy Stevenson who knows how to take care of that, how to store and archive all of that. If you ever come into the museum, on top of the shelves where all the archives are, you'll see these large gray boxes. And it's all clothing, and it's clothing not just from the Fitch family, it's all the clothing that was donated to us through the years.
Wow.
But yes, we have a document that is from the late 1600s.
Okay.
It didn't originate in Hopkinton, but it was in the Fitch papers.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So all of these, I assume they're all handwritten.
Yes.
Are they hard to read?
Yes, they certainly are. They certainly are. And I mean, it takes a lot. I think our other volunteer, Eric Pratt, he's really good at deciphering that 19th century handwriting.
Yeah.
He's done a lot with early records of different organizations in town, and he's really good at it. But it's definitely a skill, and you have to be very patient with it.
Yeah.
Because you just when you think, oh, I get this, I understand I know what this is. This is an S. It's not an F. And then it switches up again.
Yeah, yeah,
So-
yeah. And back then, didn't they, like, however they were feeling about the word, how
Right.
they sounded out would be how they would spell it, and it
Yes,
could be different.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
The Boston Public Library, with their anti-slavery collection, has a project, an ongoing project. Anybody can go on and volunteer for this. You go online and you can volunteer to transcribe the records that they have.
I see.
And I jumped right into it. I have to say, I was a miserable failure at the whole
Oh,
thing.
really?
After 15 minutes, I thought, I can't understand any of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very
It's
hard.
hard to do. I kept switching documents, thinking, well, maybe this one is better, maybe that one is better. It is hard to do.
Yeah. So is the Historical Society working through a process of trying to translate? I would say,
Yes,
transcribe all of
yes,
these?
transcribe everything and get. We have it all documented. It's all, we know where everything is. It's all separated by family, so letters and all of that. It's an incredible gift. It's a gift to anyone who's interested in, obviously, Hopkinton history, but New England history. It covers so much of the late 18th century. Elijah Fitch was the minister during the Revolution here. So it goes from that time period all the way up till the mid 20th century.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the last Fitch was around the mid 20th century.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
still farming at that time.
It just makes me curious because you talked about a lot of the clothing.
Yes.
Have all of these textiles and all these materials been stabilized? How do you
Well,
do you worry about that?
we do, but as I said, Nancy's got them all in archival boxes with the appropriate paper, and they're stored appropriately as they can be in a building that's 150, close to 160 years old now.
Right.
We obviously, if we had all the money in the world, we would do some kind of temperature stabilization,
Yes.
humidifying, dehumidifying, all of that
Yeah.
to ensure. But they're in amazing shape.
Yeah.
I mean, you would really be surprised.
I've seen some of them on display.
Yes.
And they look awesome.
Yeah, we had a couple of them out during the school days
Yeah.
event that we had last spring, and I mean, it's amazing.
Well, my gosh. Wow, we're out of time already.
Okay.
That came so fast.
All right.
There's so much more to talk about. It's so fascinating, and I love that it's right here.
It is.
And you can go and see the real stuff.
Anytime.
Thank-
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, we'll have you back again soon, Ann.
Okay, good.
And thank you for joining us with this, and please keep watching for more hidden treasures. Take care.